became miserable after opening my marriage, and now he wants to divorce me too. I am breaking down. I became miserable after opening my marriage, and now he wants a divorce officially. I don't know what to do. I did it because my friends had done it and their husband had gone crazy over them and their marriage had blossomed. I did it because my friends had preached the gospel of open marriages and I had seen the results of it and I believed that it actually worked. You see, I was desperate to save my marriage. I didn't know what had happened to our marriage. I had been married to my husband for 6 years now and we had been okay. We had been great actually, but things went south. And I suggested opening up our marriage. My name is Janelle and my husband's name is Nathan. I remember the day I had brought up the talk of opening. This had happened like a few weeks into the new year, like 5 months ago. I had been fed up with the ghosting silence in my home. We could eat dinner together and not even say a word to each other. Nathan could be at home and not want to seek out my company. Heck, I couldn't even remember the last time my husband sought out my company when he wasn't busy working or doing some other important thing. He was like a silent ornament in the house and I hated it with passion. I had tried everything I could do before suggesting opening up our marriage. I had tried talking to him, bringing up small talk and asking him about his day, and all I got in return was grunts and short replies without any questions asking me back about my own day. I tried cooking him his favorite meals and making sure everything he needed was in place, like acts of service that would matter. I filled up his gas whenever he was working in the home office. I filled up the cabinets with his favorite snacks. I made fresh meals because I knew that was what he liked. But nothing was working. So I went to my friends with my problem and they said that I should suggest opening my marriage. Well, others suggested seeking couple therapy, but I knew Nathan wouldn't be open to it. He didn't even like going to our friends' events with me. He would show up after I had already given an excuse for him and make me look like a fool in front of everyone. I told him that we needed to talk about our relationship, but he would snub me and leave me hanging. So I had gone to my friends and they said I should open my marriage, that it would definitely make my husband jealous and not want any man to be near me. According to them, men didn't like sharing, so if I opened up my marriage, my husband was bound to come to his senses and beg me to come back to him. It was supposed to go according to that plan. I had liked the idea of my husband coming to beg me after making me feel like a ghost in my own home. So when I had suggested it to him, I hadn't expected him to be so compliant to the suggestion. We had been having dinner together and I had started it off by telling him there was clearly a problem with our marriage. In his usual way, he had grunted and continued eating and didn't look like he had even heard what I had said. Then I brought up examples of our friends' marriages and he had grunted again and I just poured out my anger and frustration. I told him that I need an open marriage and instead of it coming off as a couple therapy for our marriage, it sounded like I needed a break from our marriage and I wanted to sleep with other men as an option. I had tried to correct myself and he had just simply agreed. My husband had agreed to open our marriage without argument. I had been so shocked for the first time since we had been married. I thought that maybe he would be open to trying to fix it without us needing to open our marriage. I had been hoping that he would admit to us going for couples therapy instead of willingly agreeing to open our marriage. I had only suggested that so he would admit that there was a problem with our marriage, but instead of going so far as opening our marriage, let us go for couples therapy instead. I had picked up an argument because why else would he have been open to having an open marriage if he didn't already have an affair outside? Were you guys seeing what I was seeing? I told him he had an affair or he was having an affair, that was why he had willingly agreed to open our marriage. Heck, I was trying to fix our problems and he was just creating more and I was fed up. Do you guys want to know what my husband had done? He had gotten up and walked out on me while I was still talking. I had no idea when things had gone that bad in my marriage and I had no idea what to do about it. I hadn't known my husband would be so cool with an open marriage. This was someone that couldn't go a day without touching me or talking to me before our marriage went south, and since then he had been as cold as ice. It wasn't as if what I had done was that terrible. But my husband had obviously still carried on the grudge and was having an affair outside. What had I done to make my husband hate me so much? Nothing that required a year-long grudge. It was after our 5th wedding anniversary a year ago, and he had told me not to accept a contract to design a house for one of his friends. It was his friend and the girlfriend was also a friend of mine, so I didn't know what my husband's grudge was about it. I was an interior designer. I had decided to meet with his friend and had given him a design with the plan to get my contractors down to his house to start working. We had started work and 2 weeks later my husband had found out. Nathan had not been pleased when he found out that I had gone behind his back to design his friend's house. His girlfriend had begged me to design the house because she had seen the works I had done and knew I was good at what I do. And my husband hadn't given me any major reason as to why I shouldn't take the job. I had asked him about it and he had just said no, that I shouldn't take the contract to design his friend's house. I had thought it was just my husband throwing his weight around when I could be making cool money, so I had gone against him. I had taken the contract without his consent, and when he found out he was livid, but I had seen no wrong in what I had done. He hadn't explained why I shouldn't take the contract. He just outrightly tried to husband handle me into not accepting it, knowing how strong-willed I was. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? This was why my husband had been holding a grudge against me, because I had decided to go against his wishes and do my job. It had been so silly when he had caught me. I had dropped the contract on the spot when he had walked into the house where I was having a meeting with my contractors, and then threw a tantrum like he was 3. I had been so embarrassed, but I had decided to drop the contract there and then. I thought that would be enough to pacify my husband. I had done everything I could to apologize and beg him, but Nathan didn't take well to disrespect. It had been a year since that incident of me disrespecting him and going behind his back, and my husband hadn't forgiven me and my marriage had suffered for it. Since that day, it had been a series of him giving me one-worded replies and not caring about my well-being. All because of that small mishap. That was what I couldn't wrap my head around. If you loved someone, weren't you supposed to forgive them no matter what? I had thought I could make use of the extra cash, and I had loved the idea of designing a house. I always loved the idea of designing houses. I had a passion for it. It wasn't supposed to be that big of a deal that my husband had willingly agreed to an open marriage. This was someone I had been married to for 6 years. I had met my husband at Starbucks when he had paid for my coffee, and we had talked for a while as we waited for our order. He was everything I had wanted in a guy, so it had been no surprise that after a few hangouts I was way in over my head in love with him. He was sweet and compassionate about those around him. He was so in tune with his sisters, and in my head, I knew this was a man who could treat a lady right. Luckily, he felt the same way, and we continued seeing more of each other. He always took care of everything for me before I even said it. Nathan was an active service guy. I can talk of numerous times Nathan had assured me through service about how much he loved, and this was before he even popped the question. Dating him had been like a dream, and I didn't even know my husband could hold this kind of animosity within him over just a little wrong decision that I made. We had been the fun couple amongst our friend group, the one everyone admired and wanted to be like. We went everywhere together. Nathan didn't try to embarrass me by showing up when I had given excuses for him or making me look like a fool when I tried to act all sweet and loving with him. He was a huge fan of PDA, and all my friends then had been jealous of our relationship. Nathan and I had dated for about 2 years after we had met in the coffee shop, and I had enjoyed every moment of it. I don't know if I'm blabbing on, but I'm trying to get you all to understand my predicament by explaining how Nathan used to dote on me before the whole issue like I had explained above. Now that I'm even writing about T, I'm shocked by how much he has changed. T explained how Nathan used to dote on me when we had been dating. We got married after dating and the bliss continued. Nathan never wanted to see me in any plight. He loved me and it showed. He went out of his way to make me happy. That was how, when he had fallen out of love with me, I knew it, and I was desperate to do everything to fix it, even bringing up the open marriage idea. I just hadn't known my husband would be so happy to indulge in it. You guys, it didn't take up to a week after I talked with him about opening our marriage that my husband started bringing in his lady friends to our home while I was around. Like he had no respect for me whatsoever. Every night it was a new lady, and he made sure to introduce them to me. I would be in the kitchen slaving away to cook for him, and my husband would open the door with the lady for the night and would introduce the two of us. He always told them I was his wife and we were in an open marriage, and the ladies would smile like they were mocking me and would proceed to eat my food. I became miserable because this wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was meant to be the one going out to meet guys and bringing them to the house and making him jealous, but it was my husband doing what I was to be doing, and it pained me. I was pissed, and I remember when one of his flings said it to my face. This one he had brought home 3 times, and when we had been having dinner, she was like I wasn't behaving like someone in an open marriage. She asked why I still cooked and waited on my husband. The witch basically called me out, and my husband just stayed there laughing. I turned to the joke. She began saying stuff like how she would soon move in and how we would all get along well. Me in the kitchen and my husband at work while she took care of the general household. Like she reduced me to a servant in my own home. I got into it with her and ordered her out of my house, but I didn't have any deciding power on whether she stayed or left, and they just left me in the kitchen to clean. I tried to be just like my husband, to be nonchalant after all I had brought up the idea. And it has started to look embarrassing with him coming home with various women and being indifferent about it and me pining after him. I decided to start meeting up with random men I had met on Tinder and swiped right with, especially after I had confronted my husband for a second time about our marriage. And he said I was the one that had brought on the idea of an open marriage and he wanted to please me. I wasn't pleased in the slightest, and when I saw his flings were increasing, I had to stop looking silly, moping over him like a sad puppy. Since he didn't want to fight for our marriage, I was done fighting too. This was what my husband had put me through, you all. I started going out and meeting various men. I didn't bring any back home, though. I just wanted to go out and have fun without thinking of my situation at home. And it worked. I met a guy after one of my Tinder dates ditched me, and he was so nice to me, and we exchanged contacts. We started talking. I didn't tell him I was married to someone already. I lied that I was single. He worked as a lab technologist and had a dog and lived in a studio apartment. We chatted over the phone, and when we met up and went out on occasion, I was happy with him, and my husband was busy doing his thing, and I left him to do whatever he wanted because I had found someone who had my time, but I was jealous whenever he brought home his fling. I went through life's worst trial, all because I had decided to do an open marriage with a man who hadn't seemed to care about me from the beginning. My husband wanted to throw away 6 years of marriage just like that. Do you know how bad my life became? I came home from work one day and my husband said that he was thinking of proposing to one of his flings and he wanted to divorce me. I'm sure you can imagine my shock at his declaration. All thoughts of trying to pretend I didn't want my marriage back went out the window and I started panicking and I did a terrible thing. My husband wanted to get married to another woman and divorce me. I couldn't let him do that. How could he even think of marrying another woman as divorce me when I wasn't 6 feet below the grave? I had to look for alternatives. This marriage was a forever deal. I wasn't going to be a divorced woman, and I had done something that was below my character, but I was desperate. I didn't want to be divorced. I faked a pregnancy. This was a common game in the boom, and it was the only thing I could think of. I know I shouldn't have. Now that I think about it, I'm sure there were better options other than faking a pregnancy to trap my husband with me, but I had to act quickly. At first, I thought he had been bluffing, but then he started making calls to his sisters and asking them of venues he could use to propose, and he was doing it in front of me. I had only one shot, and luckily the guy I had met on Tinder worked in the lab of a hospital. He could easily falsify a pregnancy report for me. So I got closer to him. I took him out and started building a base for our relationship. I thought of sleeping with him and then getting pregnant for him and claiming the baby to be my husband's. But I thought about the numerous repercussions and I thought it better to just falsify a result and fake being pregnant. I built the relationship with Tinder guy and I made the mistake of showing him that I had money or I was well-to-do. I was trying to get him on my side, so when I wanted to ask for a favor, I would get it from him. Time was ticking and my husband wanted to go ahead with his plans of getting married to another woman. I bought Tinder guy gifts to show I was super interested. I wanted him to know it and fall for me too. I just didn't know that this guy had his own plans for me. Terrible plans. But I asked him for the test results before we got into the part where I was horizontal and he was seducing me and I succumbed to sleeping with him. I had told him the result was for me who needed it to prove to my sister I was pregnant so she could give me money. I had promised him a cut of the money when my sister was well fooled. But I was the one being fooled in the end. His plans had been to sleep with me and it had worked. I had fallen into bed with him after I had told myself that I wasn't going to. After I told myself that I wasn't going to sleep with him, I went ahead and did just that. My head was a jumble of things, but I had been doing it all for my husband. I promise. You should understand I was trying to do it for him. I wanted him to want me back, not divorce me, and I was going to go to any level to get him back. I wanted him to stay with me. I loved him. Why did he fall out of love with me? Call me crazy, but I was willing to go to any length to keep Nathan with me. Before I got the test results from my Tinder guy, I can't reveal his name because that would be an intrusion of privacy, so I'll keep calling him my Tinder guy. I planned out everything to make it look authentic that I was already 3 months along. It has been just a month since we started our open marriage thing. So if I was 3 months along, then it was more believable. And that was the last time we had been sexually active, so I could make him believe that it was his. Yes, even though we were not talking, sometimes we had angst and lapses, and we got tangled in bed before my husband remembered his hate for me and he ran away from the bed. So I was liable to get away with a fake pregnancy. My husband was mine, and I was willing to do anything to make sure he stayed that way. I planned it in such a way that I would faint in a public place or somewhere with a mutual witness, and he would be informed about it. So I went to my mutual friend's house. I decided to go visit her to get my plan rolling. When she had given me tea, I had acted all disgusted like I couldn't stomach the tea and explained it was most definitely the flu I was coming down with. And when I had told her that I needed to go to the bathroom, I stood up and I fainted. I was aware of what was going on because it was all pretend. My friend shook me vigorously and splashed some water on me before I woke up. Pretend, of course. She told me I needed to get checked out at the hospital. I did and left her house and went to collect the test result from my Tinder guy. I knew my friend was going to inform my husband of what had happened, so I had to get the test results and head home. I got home and found my husband in the living room. I handed over the result to him. I had dumped them in his hands with my heart beating so fast that I thought he would call me out on my lies. Then I announced that I was pregnant, and my husband looked at me like he couldn't believe me. Talks of divorcing me and marrying someone else was out of the window. The day I took in had been dated back to 3 months ago, and my husband had believed it and was none the wiser. I got away with it. I could simply fake a miscarriage later on when our marriage had grown closer. After all, I wasn't the first woman to do something as crazy as my plan. I wasn't going to be the last either, so I was using what was in my arsenal. My husband said that we had to stop with the open marriage. I agreed with him and said we should start going to couples counseling to get back our marriage. My husband didn't say anything to that, but I had thought since he had agreed to stop the open marriage exclusively, then we could work on our marriage. I thought everything was back to normal. After 2 weeks of calls from my Tinder guy, I woke up one morning to find my bank account emptied. I called my manager and she said the transfer had been authorized by me, that I had been the one to initiate the transfer. I was pissed because I hadn't initiated any transactions. If I had, I would have known and not be calling her to disturb her about the whereabouts of my savings. This involved the money my husband had given me from antenatal drugs and to get things for my health and well-being of the baby, and it was all gone. I got the answer to my missing money a few days later when I received a text from Tinder guy that he had taken what he had been owed and had taken the rest as punishment for trying to cross him. And if I tried to find him in his place of work or involve the police in this case, he would go through them and have me arrested for the fraud I pulled in getting a fake result, and he hoped my husband realized what a sham I was. There had been no more talks on divorce or anything like that, but there was still something off with my marriage. I don't know what else to do with my husband again. I need help. Our anniversary is coming up, and I'm planning on throwing him a surprise party to show him how much he is loved and invite all our friends and family. It will be like a fake baby announcement to all our friends too. Don't judge me for doing what I can to keep the love of my life. You might even go through extreme measures like me if you were in my shoes. Wish me luck. Update. Hello, Redditors. My ex-husband has demanded I take this post down or he would come for me with everything in his blood, but I'm going to update you before I delete my post because I felt like you all deserved it, and as an apology for lying to you on this platform. He served me divorce papers a week ago for me making this update, and I signed them because I didn't have any choice. I was called out and humiliated in front of everyone at the surprise 6 years anniversary party I threw for him. My ex-husband had called me out on my BS and told me he would throw my ass in jail if I didn't sign the divorce papers there and then. Here was what happened. I had organized an anniversary dinner like I said I was going to in my first upload. On the evening of the party, my ex-husband had just been laughing and I had zero idea why. We had been having basic conversation before then, and he had asked me about the baby and if it was doing all right. So I managed to get him out of the house with some friends while I decorated for the party, and they brought him back when everything was done, and when he entered inside, all our friends shouted and turned on the light to reveal my decorations. Nathan had been shocked, but then he started laughing and cackling out loud. I had pushed it away as just happiness, but the laughter didn't stop, and when it was time to deliver a toast to our wedding, this was after I said my part. Nathan had brought out the pregnancy test result I had shown him and tore it up in my face. That was when I noticed my Tinder date guy at my house and he winked at me. This was also when I found out why my husband had hated me so much ever since last year. He found out that I had slept with his friend once and I had hid it from him. His sister had seen me cheating with another man in our home and had told him, the friend that I had wanted to decorate his house. In my opinion, it was a mistake and it had only happened once. I hadn't been thinking and didn't know when my body succumbed to temptation. I told my husband exactly what I am telling you all now, but it fell on deaf ears as I begged. My blood had gone cold and everyone was looking at me with evil eyes. This was how my anniversary dinner ended, with my things thrown outside forcefully and no friend to come to my aid. It's been a week since everything fell apart in my life. I don't know how to move on, and I'm thinking along the lines of unaliving myself, deleting this soon.